South Africans watching shows like Game of Thrones means paying for the privilege of being able to see them. But ICASA wants to change that by opening up the pay TV market. It's considering new restrictions for DStv owner Multichoice in an effort to curb its market dominance. This could limit, for example, the amount of Hollywood movies that Multichoice is allowed to buy the rights to. ICASA Councillor Botlenyana Mokhele joins us now to discuss how this could work. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us. One would have thought that this exercise was done, but due to a number of reasons. I'm talking here about introducing competition to Multichoice now. But it just didn't work. 4 groups were chosen. Some decided to take the license, fold it, put it in the back pocket, and actually go back to Multichoice and ask to be a service provider to Multichoice. Others, of course, disappeared because the funders couldn't really follow through. So are you then now trying to do what ought to have been done those many, many years ago via the back door?
Not necessarily, Vuyo. I just think that when we licensed as ICASA, we had assumed that the market was fair enough for anyone to take off and survive. However, over the years, as we've noticed, and as you've mentioned, a whole lot of new players in the market either folded or they just never took off. And that prompted ICASA in 2016 to start an inquiry to establish exactly what the game plan is in terms of competition in the subscription television market.
But so how much responsibility is ICASA prepared to take for one, introducing the like competitors, or potential competitors at least, to Multichoice much later than perhaps should have been the case, by which time Multichoice had done everything to actually entrench its position?
And I think that's precisely why we're having this inquiry, for us to be able to establish to what extent Multichoice dominated the market and what could be the key factors that we as a regulator could intervene in. And some of the proposals that we've made in the draft findings document point out to the fact that actually the key aspect has to do with premium content and content rights. So that's precisely where we will be intervening, because that's what we identified as being one of the key aspects that really determines whether or not a player in this kind of market survives.
Now, what are you proposing to do? What are you putting on the table?
We're proposing a suite of 7 pro-competitive remedies, and that's in addition to what is in the law, in Section 67 of the ECA. We're proposing that, for instance, that the length of contracts should be shortened, because we found that contracts that last up to 5 years are problematic in terms of new players. We're proposing that rights be broken up, so the move which is the current practice where winner takes all. The idea is that you will break down the rights in such a way that other people could be able to get access to those rights. We're proposing wholesale must offer, which means that whatever provider that has the majority of rights can actually be compelled to offer some of those rights to other players on the terms that are determined by ICASA. And last but not least, we're proposing set-top box interoperability. However, I just think we need to just take a step back and acknowledge that at this stage, what we currently are proposing in the draft is proposals of which stakeholders can still make inputs. However, as I've said, the idea is to free up premium content in such a way that whoever wants to come into the market can get access to those rights.
What do you think, or how is it going to translate into an advantage or choices or benefits for the consumer?
Look, I think it's in the nature of the regulator to intervene at a wholesale level rather than at a retail level. What we are hoping is that as more and more players get into the market and take off, they will introduce competition in terms of offerings that are out there in the market, and as a result could push down the price of bouquets.
And how soon do you think this may come into effect? Or perhaps maybe you can start from a process point of view. What needs to happen before this actually gets to be implemented?
Look, I think one thing that we need to acknowledge is that ICASA is an administrative body, which means that everything that we do has to be procedural. So at this point in time, what we've published is draft findings, after which we'll give stakeholders an opportunity to respond, and it will translate into a final findings document. Following from that findings document, and if the 7 remedies that we are proposing are seen to hold water, we will then start a process of drafting regulations, and it's within the regulations where you will have the details of how this can pan out. For instance, one of the things that we are really proposing is the wholesale must offer, and you can only deal with it through license conditions and through regulations. So it's going to take a bit longer, but hopefully next year around this time, we should be able to have started the process of the regulations. I think we have to appreciate the fact that what we're trying to address is a structural problem. It's not something that you can do overnight. And some of the proposals that we have are actually very, very far-reaching. It's going to change the way in which the business of subscription broadcasting is conducted. Because we've always had a situation where the winner takes it all, the highest bidder takes it all. However, if we acknowledge that the playing field is not level, you will need to intervene structurally. And that's why it's taking ICASA so long to really intervene.
We'll see how that goes. Thanks very much for coming through this evening. ICASA Councillor Botlenyana Mokhele.